like that but they are allowed to do whatever they want. They're allowed to get endorsements from other companies and businesses, but they also receive state funding and county funding as well.
Thank you for informing me. I agree with both of them. I believe with Justin's response that we need people to be more trained, and hopefully people that are gonna get trained, they can make people want to work more, to help with our economy and make this country a little bit more stable, a lot more stable, hopefully in the future. And it'll bring them will to want to work.
Shameless plug again. That's my candidate over there. Remember, shameless plug.
Yeah, but you asked a
Shame on
question.
me.
I don't ask questions. She asks questions.
Next.
Do you support state amendments that place restrictions or qualifiers on abortion?
Personally, for me, this is an issue of morality, not of politics. I believe that the government has no place in deciding what is moral and what is not. I personally, morally, would like to see restrictions on abortion to incest, defense against the mother's life, like if the baby is threatening the mother's life, or rape. And I would like to see that because having to carry a child for 9 months when you've been raped or incest, or it's going to kill you, is an awful, terrible thing that is traumatic for mothers. And I would like to see that done with. But also, I don't want to see people just throwing away their babies when they could be adopted by a couple that couldn't take care of or have one themselves. Thank you.
I also do not support, because the state shouldn't have a right to determine your control over what you want to do with your kid. And I agree with him about rape, because no woman, well, in my perspective, I wouldn't want to be carrying my rapist's child. And most abortions, they don't allow it for a certain amount of months. And many people, when they do get abortions, it's only in the very beginning stages where it's not even a baby yet, it's a bunch of cells. It's a zygote. But I also agree with the incest stuff too. And it's a woman's body. She shouldn't have to have other people control and she shouldn't have to deal with anyone having to discriminate against her.
Okay, so how I feel about states placing restrictions on abortion, I feel like that it should be more of a federal decision to whether regulations or restrictions should be put on abortion, because we already have established with the Supreme Court ruling of Wade versus Roe that you can get abortions and that they are legal around the country. I feel like that we should have all across the country standard of how we view abortions, and I believe that it is also, I also believe with my candidates that is a woman's choice, but through my plan we would make laws more across the board, across the country, and then also implement more programs to help to make that a woman's last resort. So that way she's taking birth control, she's doing all the things that she needs to do to avoid having to get abortions, but if it is needed, that she may have one.
I would like to first agree with Jayla. I think that Planned Parenthood is a very good thing in that it provides birth control and condoms and other anti-things, I can't remember the word right now, but it does give programs to mothers that help prevent pregnancies. And I think that's one of the things that we should be focusing on in preventing abortions. I don't agree with
Really wrong.
Natalia. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't agree with Natalia, however, because I don't believe that a baby is only a bundle of cells for the first few months.
Weeks.
Weeks? Okay, I'm sorry. For the first few weeks. After I believe it is for 4 weeks. I'm not a baby doctor at all, but for the first 4 weeks, it is just turning into cells, but after that, the baby has developed enough so that the stem cells are there and that everything that the baby will become in the future is in the mother currently. I would much rather see babies adopted out or helped in some ways than just being aborted. Other than that, I agree with most of everything that they're saying. Thank you.
To respond to that, I do agree with my candidate. My opposition about sorry, about like trying to prevent abortions by promoting adoption. But let's just be honest, in America, that's not happening. There's a lot of kids in the foster care system, and that's why I plan to increase funding to the foster care system, so that way people feel more comfortable with the idea of their child going into foster care to adopt or getting adopted, because a lot of women feel uncomfortable with that situation, so they feel like they don't feel like their kid would have a good life at all, so they choose the option of abortion. So I feel like it's less about whether abortion is right and whether everybody is on the same board of whether abortion is right. I feel like we should just, some people feel that it's wrong and some people feel that it's right. I feel like to make a middle ground, we have to put regulations and programs in place to where we could use that as the last resort or the last alternative.
I agree with both of my candidates, the opponents. I agree with both of them, and I agree with Jayla about informing people to having an abortion as their last resort, because although it is their decision, it is quite devastating having to abstract a life that could have made it into seeing the daylight.
What is the most viable alternative energy source, and how can Americans incorporate into their lifestyles?
I believe that one alternative energy source is not the answer. Sure, there are things that could be potentially more viable with today's technology, but again, with today's technology, most things are not available to all areas and are not available widespread. Nuclear energy only can provide energy for one city. A hydroelectric dam can only produce enough electricity to run about one city, and windmills are only sustainable over short distances. So I think that adding funding to all of those programs would be a great thing, and if we do that, then we need to focus on what the potential outcomes would be and what spaces we would put those in. Also, we need to find a place for radioactive waste from nuclear energy to be put and contained safely. Thank you.
I agree with him. I agree that there is not just one. We have multiple sources. We could use sun, the sun, what's it called? You know, there's like
Solar energy.
solar energy. The air too, the windmills. I believe we should start off putting them in the large states where there's more energy used and there's more pollution, like such as California, Texas, or in very populated states like New York. We need to find spaces where to put those, because those cities are very crowded, and we need to inform people the good in doing that, because some people are not aware, they're not open-minded, they're not aware, and it's good to inform those people.
Okay. So my stance is that I believe that one of the most effective or the most widely used is probably solar energy. I feel like there's a lot of power in solar energy, and power and solar. Okay, but there's a lot of power in solar energy, and I feel like we could use it to our advantage. But there are a lot of other resources, like my opponent said, that they work just as well, or they have their drawbacks. But I feel like in order to get rid of those drawbacks of solar energy not having enough sun or the money or anything like that, you have to increase funding and then also advocate for these power sources to be integrated into American society. So for one way you could get Americans on board with that is through incentives like tax cuts or something like that, or reimbursing them for buying these solar or any type of energy, different types of energy, because in the long run they're gonna get the gains back from it. So, yeah.
I agree with both of the candidates. It seems like this is an issue that we're all fairly congruent about, but I would like to address the tax cuts and the funding that would be given. So one of the things that has potentially been raised is larger companies putting solar panels on their skyscrapers instead of windows. So would you increase funding to do that as well, and give them tax cuts, or how would we go about that? I'm just a little curious.
As far as big corporations, the tax cuts wouldn't be a drastic measure, because doing that to a skyscraper or a building is not really helping lessen our impact on the environment. I'm talking more of the production, all that type of stuff. So factories, if they're implementing these more cleaner energy processes into their actual production, they could receive tax cuts. And far as the average citizen doing the same thing, because we're all leaving our mark on the globe. So I would enforce these cuts and tax breaks or incentives on general people and companies, but not for putting solar panels on their skyscrapers.
I can agree with that. I really like the tax cuts towards smaller everyday citizens for getting these solar panels. With our extra budget that I would put into alternative energy, I would use that money to give them tax cuts and benefits so that the cost of solar panels, which is ultimately too high right now, is increased. Also, I would put funding into researching solar panels so that they can become more affordable and more obtainable to the everyday citizen. Thank you.
I agree with both of them.
Yes, I agree with both my candidates both my opponents, that we do need more funding for these cleaner energy sources. And I feel like if Americans just invest a little bit of time and effort, or maybe some of their money, they're gonna get it right back. Like, these energy sources are renewable, they last long, and you're getting your money back. Like, who doesn't want their money back? Yeah, so.
How do you believe the federal government should handle immigration issues?
Can I start with this one? Okay, so I believe that the federal government, what they're doing right now, I do not agree with. They should stop separating families, because you're just causing more issues. You're causing more publicity on situations that we're supposed to be solving, not causing more issues. I believe that they should control their borders, but they shouldn't be sending out the people that have been here, supporting them, living here. They pay taxes just like regular citizens. They just don't have a citizenship. So what I believe they should do is provide my campaign and my party, we support that we should provide those people with papers, and especially the people who hold a green card or who have DACA, they should automatically get papers because they've been here for so long and they support our economy.
My view on immigration is that it all depends on who's in office at the time. So a lot of the reason why immigration is such a big problem and such a huge issue in America is that every time a president is elected, something is changing. We need set laws, legislation, and a set precedent around the whole entire country that will stay in place for the rest of American history. The fact that every time a new president comes in, they're changing this, they're enforcing this. Some are a little bit lenient on it. Some are more harsh on it. So I feel like we need across the board legislation on what we're going to do about immigration and work towards a constitutional plan, but also making sure we're keeping our country safe.
I absolutely agree with the other two candidates on this issue. I think the families should never, ever be separated. That would be horribly traumatic to anybody in any world. That should never happen. I would like to see immigrants, instead of being deported, having the process streamlined so that they can get papers almost immediately with background checks, however. Because we do need to keep our border secure and our country safe from people that might not be the most patriotic of people. But as long as they're not violent criminals, I don't think that they should be denied any access to America. No one should be denied the American dream unless they're an absolute threat to the other citizens of America. Thank you.
Oh, wait,
No, we have to
do
do it.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay, so I agree with both of them. I agree with
Justin.
Justin.
You
I
don't know
agree-
my name either.
Yeah, I did it just because
No,
I
you guys
did
are
it.
best.
So I agree with him on doing background checks because not everyone deserves to get papers if they're doing bad things. I do agree with that. I do agree that automatically I believe we should be giving papers to people who have been here longer than 8 years. Those who are coming here, they all want a better life that they couldn't get in their own country. And you shouldn't deny people the freedom. This country gives a lot of opportunities to people that can't get it in their own country, such as education. The economy here does way better than countries, for example, Mexico, who has that 12 pesos is $1. And it's just, the money difference is extraordinary, and there's a lot of violence in these third world countries as well.
Good afternoon, Warriors. This is your brother,
Is it time?
Mr. Avenue.
Yeah, it's 2:16.